The dollar has continued strong, and so massive funds are sitting on the sidelines, staying out of risky assets until at least the dollar starts losing steam. And that moment may be coming soon. So let's look at that. Let's also look at Bitcoin and the Bitcoin and ETH prices, and also some of your suggestions from the viewers of those altcoins that have come from audience member suggestions from last week's video. Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel. I'm your host, Jay Rain. If you like money in crypto and you're looking for a seasoned investor's take on the crypto market, join the Rainmaker family. Do note, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a crypto investor myself. Also note that I do own or plan on most of what I talk about on this channel because I don't talk about crypto projects I don't believe in. We want to thank our Patreon members. We do have a private Discord there. Our Patreon members get access to. Go ahead and make it rain on that like button. Strap in for the show. And let's welcome Paul from Definity.
Yeah, hi. It's once again such an interesting point in the markets. We got a Fed meeting literally as we're on air. And we're just waiting for that final capitulation before money can start flowing back into the markets.
Yes, with the CPI being higher and some other data, I saw Germany's producer price index increased by 50% or close to 50%. That kind of data, it's like, I think the Fed's going to be still pretty hawkish on their raise.
Yeah, I mean, we're thinking maybe like short term, it could be 75 basis points. But it wouldn't surprise me today if they try to get it all done front loaded. In other words, they do 100 basis points or a whole percentage point tonight. The market has been moving in a very unusual way. We've seen yields rising aggressively. They've broken out some technical levels. They were hovering below them on the yield markets, which I can show you. And it was a question of whether they were going to surge through them or turn down. And they've surged through them to the upside. When we see price action like this, it makes me very suspicious that they're going to do more than we suspect. Somebody in the background, I think, knows what they're going to do. And the dollar index, which was hovering around 110, has now broken out or is about to break out again to the upside. So I think we might even see it beyond my sort of 110, 112 window. We could even see it touch 114. But I still maintain that we're nearing the end of this phase because I just can't see how consumers are going to cope with this stronger dollar, especially in America, stronger dollar, higher interest rates all round and higher energy prices. It's almost like it's going to be biting pretty hard. And I think it may take a lurch into new lows for the S&P and the Dow Jones before the Fed kind of react to it and try and realize that they might have over tightened in the short term and have to rein back on what they're doing. So I think they could be doing a bit more damage. So it could be darker before we get back into the risk on phase. But often when you get the end of a phase like this, it's massive capitulation and panic right at the end of the trend. It may last a little while, but then it clears everything out and we get a big turnaround in the trend. So we're closer to potentially that moment. I hope that we can hold off on the lows when it comes to the crypto assets with regard to Bitcoin and Ethereum. So hopefully they can hold their lows whilst weathering this dollar storm. But I don't think it seems increasingly unlikely now.
Yeah, they might break to new lows, which will scare a lot of people out of it, which is, it always happens, right? And the bottom of the market is always the most savage. And a lot of people bail out because they just get this fear, oh my gosh, it's going to go to zero. And it doesn't, but it goes down. A bunch of people panic out. The capitulation happens, and then it's ready to run. And I'm looking forward to that. And I know the possible or probable pain ahead is just part of what needs to take place before a massive run. I have my positions, my bags are packed, my positions are ready to go. I have a little bit liquid on the side. If prices go even lower, I can pick up a bit more. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited about the midterm, right? Now, the short term might be a little bit bearish or even very bearish, but the medium term should be amazing is my thought.
Yes, absolutely. I think if we can ride out this trend once we get to the end of it, there could be some amazing opportunities. I mean, I know that there's some great projects out there, some really smart people. I was speaking to Manu from Definity today about, you know, some of the ideas and projects that he's got and technology that we've got to show, and it's just amazing. So the fundamentals of what's going on will overshadow the short term, and you can understand that people get nervous and they bail out their positions, but longer term, it will come to bear, because this is brand new technology and it's not going anywhere. So it's thinking about the long term in times like these is a very important strategy.
Yeah, and the general principle of making money is to buy low in order to sell high. And what's so funny is people reverse that. They usually sell low after having bought high, but then they sell low and then they actually FOMO back in after new highs are reached. And yeah, so the time period when people are panic selling out is when I like to stock up. And then when people are FOMOing in is when I like to sell. and it is that simple. Simple isn't always easy, but it is that simple.
Yes, absolutely. As you say, thinking about the long term is quite important. And also, if you're trading on margin, that can be a very big problem when the market is like this, and you kind of get forced out of positions that you like. But if you're buying assets like a value investor might buy certain stocks and hold on to them for the long term, as any value investor knows, and that's somebody who buys stocks which have relatively boring stocks but throw out cash and are kind of unloved by the market. Like growth stocks are usually the ones that the market's looking for, the exciting sort of sexy stocks that have got interesting technologies, which is what a lot of the altcoins could fall into, you know, and this whole space is a bit like that, which is why it's so subject to the whims of risk on and risk off. But at some point, the maturity of the sector will settle down, and, you know, people will look at the long-term prospects and look at the actual technology for what it can deliver, and thinking sometimes like an investor rather than a trader in this sector, I think will be, you know, beneficial. But to do that, you also have to have your skill, which is to be able to understand and analyze the background to the companies, and not just kind of jump on anything that's hot. Knowing what the background is far more important for a value investor, and I think perhaps for a long-term investor than perhaps my focus, which is I obviously will get blown around by the short-term trends, but I also look at the long-term trends and the long-term macro situations in order to try and formulate a broader picture. But it's still, you know, going to be an exciting space for many years to come. So
yeah, and things go through cycles, right? And so we've seen lots of indicators that we're near the bottom, possibly at the bottom, but that's impossible to know if you're really at the bottom. There's nothing that tells you you're exactly at the bottom. You just have lots of indicators that we're near the bottom. Maybe it goes lower, maybe it doesn't. I like to think about when we've been swimming in a lake, and you know those lakes where you like reach down for the bottom and it's really muddy and murky and you can't quite tell where the bottom is. That's how any market is near the bottom. You can't quite tell exactly where the bottom is, but you can feel that you're close. And so I've got that feeling like we're close. Whether we're at the exact bottom, I don't really know. It's not that I don't care, but I don't worry about it because I'm happy buying near the bottom. And then I save it to when it feels like it's near the top. So
yes, it's you know it when it's there, and it's kind of like one of those things. When everything kind of synchronizes. I mean, the dollar has been very strong for a long time, and usually the final phase of any trend is a big convincer. It's a very, very big sort of convincing move. So anybody who hasn't been in the trend will usually jump in right at the last moment, and it may continue for a bit longer beyond that. I think one of the analogies is, you know, in the cartoons where they go over the cliff and they're just sort of holding there in that motion where they're not falling, they're just sort of, their legs are spinning and they're just staying there. Sometimes that's an analogy for the end of the trend, where it's just in that state where it hasn't reversed, but it's like near the end, and then suddenly you get the big move. And so at the moment, if a few things are pointing to the upside in terms of the dollar, which we have to respect. I have to respect them until I get the actual signals. But one of the interesting ones that we hear in the market is when people talk about the gold market and they say, oh, or sorry, I should say they talk about Bitcoin and say, well, it's not done very well in terms of an inflation hedge. But they don't mention that gold hasn't done very well either. Gold has underperformed when it comes to inflation. So it's not something that you can really blame the crypto assets for, especially at this stage, because people often take profit on positions when other markets have gone down. So in other words, if they made money on Bitcoin from the long term and their equity positions are doing badly and they need to either find margin or they're looking to invest, they'll move their positions around. And so another description of that is they'll use their gold holdings or Bitcoin holdings a bit like a cash machine. So when other things aren't making money, they'll just sell to raise cash. And that's why in this environment, it could be you have these kind of long-term safe, inverted commas, safe haven assets that aren't actually performing that well in a supposedly very high inflation market. So gold, you would expect to be a great hedge of inflation. It also depends on which currency you're talking about. If your currency is declining quite rapidly, as sterling has been, certainly against the US dollar, but what hasn't, then gold and Bitcoin is been doing relatively much better because, of course, you're referencing it against an asset that's relatively stable compared to your declining currency.
Yeah, good points. I saw this video by Chico Crypto, which was a fantastic video. I saw the thumbnail and I was like, I have to watch this video. So he talked about the suppression of gold's price by people in the U.S. After 1970, after Nixon depegged or decoupled the U.S. dollar and gold. And they did some maneuvers to hold gold price down so that the dollar wouldn't lose dominance against gold. And they allowed essentially trading against gold without having the assets backed. So in other words, you could hold naked shorts. And there were certain periods where there were 3 times the amount of shorts against gold than there was actual gold supply known on the earth. So they were able to keep the price of gold artificially down this way. And the suggestion is that that's also why the US SEC has been allowing ETFs that can be traded without holding it. So they're traded with the US dollar, but not allowing spot ETFs which would make you actually have Bitcoin to be able to bet against Bitcoin, right? So in other words, allowing naked shorts against Bitcoin, which allows people to take huge shorts against it, even more than the total supply of Bitcoin out there, is a way of holding it back, but not allowing spot ETFs, which would then require holding actual Bitcoin and could only be traded against the actual Bitcoin that's out there. Fascinating article and concept that maybe that's why gold has been held down, and that is a strategy being employed against Bitcoin because the regulators are doing so much that should devalue fiat, especially the US dollar, and yet it keeps not devaluing against gold and Bitcoin like it should be. And we're all asking ourselves why, and maybe that's a piece of that puzzle that I didn't yet understand.
Yeah, it's certainly possible. There's many people that say the gold market is manipulated, and in the end, the way I see it is you can't change that. So as a technician, I have to say, well, this is the market. It's either going up or it's not. And I try to find macro reasons. So if you look at yields rising, then you see the dollar rising and you see the impact, you see the correlations and how the markets move in waves and cycles and things like that. That's my intermarket analysis. But when it comes to actual reasons, there's nothing I can do about that. It could be true and it might not be. And I know that it's probably right, but I don't know for sure. And so all I can say is that if I'm an investor in gold, and it's not going up, that's my only metric. It's not going up, it's not performing. Therefore, I have to find something else that is performing and invest in that. And that's kind of as simple as it gets for me. Otherwise, it's like I could be pondering why. Now, I think, as I say, I've heard from many sources that they think the gold market is manipulated. I can't prove or disprove that. So I just say, yeah, that could be right. And it is a bit strange that it doesn't perform quite as well as other markets. And it is a bit strange that it doesn't actually perform very well when we've got very high inflation. So those things are quite suspicious and could be true, but they're also things that I can't change. So I have to just either say, look, I won't trade gold because it's manipulated or it's not doing what I expect. Or I just accept that that's the way the market is and deal with it on that basis, which is usually how I approach it. I think there will be a big move up in gold and all other assets, but I think it's not surprising really that it's priced in dollars and the dollar's been strong. So I think that's the signal there. If the dollar starts to weaken a lot and gold doesn't go up and crypto assets don't rally and there's not a general broad rally, then I think there might be something strange going on. But at the moment, it seems to make sense with what's actually happening in the markets in front of us.
Yeah, that was interesting. Manipulators can only do so much, right? They have some pressures. We have seen the dollar strengthening, and as the dollar strengthens, a lot of then these large funds will just they'll hold dollars and things that they can make yield in dollars on. But then as it reverses, they're likely to go into riskier assets, so equities or even crypto assets. And that's a big marker we've been looking for is finally that trend line. In fact, maybe you can show it to us. Let me add it in here.
Sure.
Show us the charts of the US dollar and look at how strong it has been going up. And this is why part of the reason why crypto probably has been trading sideways and downwards. The US dollar is where so many massive funds are going because look at how strong this has been.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an amazing trend going back to sort of June, July last year, which is when it started. And it started to accelerate. No one was really talking about it while we were watching it accelerate. Now, around this 110 level, 108 to 110 was my target. And we hit that and it came off. And I thought, okay, that's it. And of course, I was trying to be smart, wasn't I? Trying to pick the top. It looked like I had, but I hadn't. It gone back up again. And to be fair, when the CPI number was strong, it didn't manage to make it go into a new high. So that's why I thought maybe the dollar trend was punching its way out of it. It was like punching itself out and running out of steam. But then the yields moved in a way. I'll show you the chart in just a second that sort of concerned me this week, certainly this week, that there's something else going on that might at least go for one more big move. Now, this move here, this little consolidation and then a push into a new high, that's a dangerous sign for me. Anything that's moving into a new high is usually indicative of more highs. And that's part of trend trading. So I have to respect this. Now, even though I might feel that it's near the end of the trend, I'm going to need a bit more evidence before I can change my view and then turn bearish on the US dollar. At the moment, I'm just saying, yeah, the trend is good again. It looks like it's going to go for another move. I don't particularly want to jump in with both feet, but I have to respect it from a short-term perspective. But if we look at the 2-year yield, you can see that this is really accelerated through highs, and 346 was where I thought it might hit and then come down, but it's actually squeezed. And it's even accelerated. If I just bring that a little bit closer to you, so you can see how it's accelerated a few days ago, and it's now pushing over 4%. Now, the 10-year yield is the one that's looked at mainly because of bond prices or prices for mortgages, and that is trading over the 3.5%. So, and it's just surged through there, and this has been very strong. So I was looking at Head and Shoulders reversal here. It broke it. It came down, went up. Now, this could have been as part of a double top. You know, you never really know at this stage. You just can have an inkling that it might be. But now it's broken into a new high. This could obviously be forming a major top, which would be great if it made a Head and Shoulders or something like that. This was part of the left shoulder. This is part of the head, and now it's going to come down. But I can't confirm that. Only until the market confirms it, breaks this upward trend line, that would be the first sign that yields are starting to come off. Now, this is a bit weird, the way this price action is almost so compressed, so contained. I don't like to see that. That's a little bit suspicious because it's not normally how it trades. in the trend, it's a little bit more volatile. And here it's very compressed at a 45-degree angle. So that may be that it needs one more squeeze and then it'll reverse. I'm not sure, but that's unusual price action. That tells me somebody knows something. That's why I'm a bit more suspicious that we're going to see a whole percentage point move today. But we really need this to be easing off and coming lower for people to be able to borrow money cheaply, to invest in products, and invest in, you know, whatever companies need to invest in. If the cost of borrowing goes up, it obviously affects their bottom line. And with energy prices going up, that affects everybody. It affects people's travel. All costs go up. Actually, in that regard, I'm going to show you something very quickly here. This is the Baltic Dry Index. The Baltic Dry Index, not very often looked at, but this is the prices of shipping goods in certain shipping lanes across Asia. And of course, it's a bit like how much the average of a taxi fare would be around certain routes in a certain area. And if you sort of average the price out as to what everyone's charging, it can tell you how busy the taxis are. And this has been in a downward trend, but very recently it's been accelerating back up, which suggests that activity has been falling, but now it's starting to rise again. So I think that's quite interesting. That might be a nice indicator that perhaps the market is looking beyond this period for a period of growth. And usually you get these little fragments where the market, or people who are looking ahead of the kind of bearish news for signs of positive activity. And that could be one of them. The Baltic Dry Index is one that was quite instructive in the 2008 crisis, because it collapsed to suggest that demand had just completely disappeared, which is what we've seen very similarly now. But this recent move has been quite a good one to the upside. And just to finish up on the equity markets, which are the most sensitive of all markets, I find, the S&P has done relatively well, but it's still under pressure. And again, this week, I don't know if I don't like the way it's approaching these lows here. So it could be heading towards this low and maybe even lower. So until it turns tail and starts to go back up again, which it could do, this could all be a consolidation, which would be great. Where I'm a bit more concerned, if we look at the DAX index, for example, you mentioned Germany and their CPI, or their was it the producer price index? If we look at this, this looks like a descending triangle, which is really kind of dangerous. If it breaks this 12,430 level, this low here, which is, we've seen a bounce, it's come down, another bounce, and it's come down. This looks like it's got a bit more downside if it breaks this low. So the feeling is equities have got to turn around, otherwise, you know, it's kind of reflecting what's going on in the yield market, I would say. And I think caution is very much the watchword for the short term.
Yeah, and definitely is really going to be interesting to see what the Fed does do. If they raise it, probably, that would be my guess, is a full point as well, which is 1%. Maybe even a little bit higher. I wouldn't have thought just 5 days ago that'd be a little bit higher till I saw some producer price index numbers, right? We mentioned the Germany one because that was particularly high, but that then filters into further inflation, and the Fed gets to see those kind of numbers and they make their decision based on that. So, and they've been very hawkish, right? Trying to catch up, because I wouldn't say that they're trying to get ahead of this, because they're way behind. They were slow to really start raising rates, so they're playing some catch up here, and we'll see how hawkish they go, and then what impacts that has. At some point, the dollar should turn around, and when it does, money will come into the risk on assets, or the risky assets, which we're looking forward to, because some point that should mean more money coming into crypto once again. And that's when prices can do really well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I think usually they're looking at backward data. So it's backward looking data that's informing their positions, so, or their opinions, and the market's forward looking, so they're usually out of sync, and that's why they may be on a, they're tightening too hard too quickly. I mean, some would argue they should have done this a long time ago. You might argue they shouldn't have printed a couple of $1 trillion during the pandemic. I mean, that was pretty foolish. That's why you've got inflation. So but in the end, it's like, well, what's done is done. You've got to deal with the market in front of you. So the problem is that if you end up with an interest rate policy where you put everything to zero, if you've got your pedal on the metal and you've got nitrous oxide in the engine and you've done everything you can to make this machine work as fast as it can, then there's nowhere to go. And it's like, when you have a problem, well, they went to quantitative easing, but that's the problem with that strategy. There's no balance, and there's also no desire really to have proper monetary and fiscal control, because you can always just print your way out of a problem. Well, certainly in the short term, which is politically what they want, but the long-term problems will last. Obviously, it will create long-term an overhang, which needs to be dealt with. And so, so this is where we are. They are having to raise interest rates at a point where the dollar's also getting extremely strong and causing problems to the, one of the biggest economies in the world.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see how all this shakes out. Bitcoin was born in an environment like this, as we kind of head into some things that were similar to 2008, which caused the creation of Bitcoin. And what's also interesting to me is that in a lot of ways, Bitcoin and crypto in general has been correlated with the NASDAQ. And when the NASDAQ does poorly, then all of a sudden crypto does poorly. And a lot of people think it's because Wall Street traders are essentially trading it like a tech stock. At some point, it might decouple. And if it does, that could be powerful. The tech stocks might do poorly and crypto does incredible. If that happens, that would be a really exciting environment.
Yeah, some of the tech stocks are looking a little bit shaky at the moment. Like Google is just, or Alphabet now, has broken its low. We saw we talked about Meta last week, which broke its low, and it's extending lower, and that's not good. Microsoft is near its low. Not all-time low. Obviously, we're talking about lows for the year, and in all of them. But Apple's doing much better. Apple's doing okay, and so it's kind of a mixed bag. And Amazon seems to be doing okay as well. I mean, I wonder whether it's because they've got a, whether it's their kind of media arm, because Netflix is doing okay. I mean, there's a lot of competition for video services, and perhaps that's a stream that's doing well and a good hedge for those particular players. But the ones that don't have that seem to be under more pressure. Microsoft doesn't make video content or film content, but something like Nvidia, which, as you're saying, the crypto market is very much in tune at the moment with these tech stocks. I thought this might be forming a base at inverse head and shoulders, and it broke the right shoulder, went down, took the low out, which has worried me a little bit about the broader position as to what will happen with tech. With the crypto assets. If we look at Bitcoin, it was struggling to rally, and it didn't manage to take out this 22,957 resistance, and it's not conclusively moved in any direction. It's still in this range, which is frustrating. The only problem is it's very close to the lower end of the range, which, whenever a market is in that position, you've got to brace yourself for a potential break of the low and where it might go to next. Now, I hope it can weather this storm, as I was saying before, and this all forms into a double bottom formation. So that would be one low up and then down. And then if it starts to go up again, we'll get a double bottom formation with a really solid base that should set the rally up for many months to come. But in this period here, and with the dollar rallying, with the way the dollar index took the high out and all those things, as it's approaching these lows, we've got to be extremely cautious and careful, and then look for the next potential support point. So if we do get like a surge to the downside, the next Fibonacci level comes in around 14,715. So that's like traders will try to buy on that level on a first hit basis, regardless of what's going on. They just kind of shut your eyes, put your bid in there. And if it works, then you get a really good bounce and a potential big profit. But if it breaks it, they'll be out straight away, because it's not a position that you hold. It's a short-term trade, if you see what I mean. It's like a panic. They'd be hoping that it's the end of the panic at that point, and that's how it'd be viewed. So the setup on Bitcoin is still in this range, but it's concerning that it's approaching these lows. And so I'd be very cautious, especially if it gets through and breaks this. I mean, as a technician, if it breaks the low, I've got to respect that and go with it, and look for the next major level. So it hasn't done it yet. We're still waiting for this decision. And if it's up today, so it's up ahead of it. So we shall see if it can hold on to it. In terms of trading, technically, Ethereum's done extremely well, because it's held on to this 1280 level, which was the breakout point, perfectly. Now, if it can hold above that, it's really holding on by its fingernails. But if it can hold above that, then this would still structurally be a bullish trend. But again, with the decision coming up and with the strength of the dollar and everything else, it seems it's becoming less likely that that's going to hold. But as we're talking today, it is above this 1280 level. So one can be positive on that. And it is still quite far away from its 2022 low. So those are two positives for it. But whether it can swim against the rest of the market, especially if equity markets are coming off, that's quite a big ask. So again, I'd be braced for the downside, but if we're pleasantly surprised and it doesn't do it, that's a good thing.
Yeah, with that big announcement coming out, and they're already so close to those support lines. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they break to below. Let's take a look at some altcoins. So these come from viewer suggestions. These are ones that in the last week's video that viewers suggested they want us to review this week. If you have some suggestions you want us to review for next week's episode, put up to 2 of them down below in the comment section. Particularly include what you like about them, right? The more you can tell us about what you like about them really helps on our analysis. So let's take a look at the first one. That would be Freeway Token. Now, Freeway Token is one that I hold a lot of. Let's see where it's at.
Yeah, so I had a quick look at some of these. Sorry, just adjust my camera here. So I had a quick look at some of these just before. I mean, usually I like to look at them with you because I get my first sort of view. But I've noticed that recently some of them aren't on. We can't get the first chart up, so I didn't want to sort of waste time trying to find them when they're not actually on this Coin Trader Pro website. So I've sort of preloaded them to find them. Now this one is I think it's the right one.
Yep.
It's got data up to the 21st of September. Obviously, we had all this noise here. That's
from a hack that happened on the wallet of a bridge. So Freeway Token is both on Binance Smart Chain and on Ethereum. And so they had a bridge partner that handles being able to bridge between the two chains. Well, that bridge partner got their wallet hacked. And so then a whole bunch of their tokens got dumped, which dumped the price. And then the price came back up as, that got solved.
Yeah. So if we say that, we shouldn't ignore price, but that's kind of like a special case. So let's say this would be a continuation. If we just say that it continued like this, then for the moment, this is still in a downward trend. I mean, the big picture is a range. So we've got a kind of range from here to here. So, and that goes back to July last year. So it's trending within the range, but that's okay, because it's done that before and it's turned around and gone up. So it's close to pretty good support where it is now. But this descending price action is more indicative of further downside potential pressure. So that's more the bias for the moment. So I would say that it could trade down to this support level here, which is around 0.0049, so half a cent would be potentially where it could go to. But I'd hope it turned around before. But that's, I think, the sort of zone that it's headed towards. So for me, at the moment, I like the fact that it's broadly in a range bound market, big picture. But short term, it seems to be under a bit more pressure. So it'd be a wait from me.
For me, it's a wait too, because it looks like it might have further downside. I do own a bunch of this that I'm not selling. If I were a short-term trader, I would even sell a little bit of what I have, and then I would put buy orders in down below, because it does look like it's going to go down more. So for you, this is a wait. For me, it's also a wait, because I just think it's got a little bit more downside ahead of it. As it is, I have what I have. I have it staked on their site, earning a yield for having it staked on their platform, or at least I have half of what I have staked on their platform, just earning a yield. So,
yeah,
so behind it, it's a unique concept. So I go more into Freeway Token in other videos. If you want to check out more on it, go to the channel and look for Freeway Token, and you'll find a much more in-depth breakdown of what Freeway Token is. Let's take a look at the next one, which is Enjinstarter. Now, all the Launchpad projects have been performing poorly in this bear market for two reasons. Number one, they usually still have some of their tokens vesting to pre-sell investors. But secondarily, people aren't as concerned with holding Launchpad tokens when new launch projects aren't coming out and doing 10x or 50x right away. That kind of thing, as money starts coming into the market again, then some of these new launch projects will do really, really well. So people scramble to get some of the tokens of the best Launchpad projects. And Enjinstarter is, in my opinion, one of the best Launchpad projects. So its token has been suffering because they've had some pre-sale token vesting and other things. So a lot more supply coming into the market. I think those pre-sale distributions are over or just about over. And it looks like we might be seeing a double bottom in their price here.
Yeah, it's early days for that at the moment. What I like that the trend is relatively smooth. So it seems to be a good bit of activity on it. I don't know whether there's potentially a lot of volume, but the actual chart looks like it trades nicely from a technical point of view. Unfortunately, the trend, as you say, has been very bearish, and it stopped around June time, and we got this rally, which would have been really nice to build on. But that wasn't possible. It just didn't happen. So that's a shame. Now the question here is this building into a bigger reversal pattern? Will this go back up and form a W? And through this third of a cent level, that's where I would say I become much more interested in it. That would confirm to me that the trend is properly broken. It's formed a W, and there's the base, and it'll be a bigger base. But whilst that's in doubt, and with the macro position for this week, I'm definitely going to be a bit more cautious, just generally on everything. I think we've got to wait, because it's heading towards this prior low. Now, this is really good support, because it went 1, 2, it turned this trend around. So this is a big trend, and it stopped right here, had a bounce. If we look at the rate of the bounce as well, it was a little less aggressive than the rate of the rise. So what I like to see is when it starts to rise, it picks up and it accelerates, because then it shows me that more buying's coming in. There's something really exciting going on. If you get a kind of low low velocity rebound, if you can describe it that way, then it looks more like just a general sort of rebound in a bear market, and I'm a bit more cautious of that. But that's what can happen when it's forming a bigger base. So it doesn't rule out that this is a base. It just says, it's a shame that it didn't accelerate from here. But when the market's changing such a big trend like this, it usually takes more than a small double bottom, which was what was here, to do that. So this would not be unusual for a bigger base forming. It's just that we're still either in that process, or it wants to have another go at the downside, given the broader macro position. So for me, it's definitely a wait. But I really like the way it trades. You know, as I say, some markets just trade nicely from a technical point of view, and this is one of them.
Yeah, out of the different launch pads out there, Enjinstarter is one of my favorites. I feel like they have the right connections to get some of the best projects that can launch on them. I do have a lot of these tokens from them myself. I think it's close to 2 million total tokens, which right now the value on that isn't all that much. But I'm looking forward to the future. Now, I have this not on logarithmic scale, regular scale. And see, look how you have this nice rounding bottom. So that's attractive to me generally. And sometimes I start nibbling at good individual points and then hold more for later. So it's not a terrible time. If I were looking to add more of this, I would probably nibble, just nibble here. And then I would be hoping actually that the price devastates even more to buy some more. And it's weird that, you know, I would take a position and then hope that the price gets savage anymore, just because I like to buy cheap, right? I like to buy good projects that have a strong team, a strong narrative, and I like to buy them cheap. And so sometimes when I buy, it's because I want some kind of position in case it does take off. And if it gets savage more, well, then that allows me to dollar cost average in at a much lower price than it takes off. Currently, I hold a big position in this. I'm not buying more. Yeah, looking forward to the future as money comes back in the market. Then some of these new projects that are launching do tremendous, and launch pads like Enjinstarter are become very essential and on a lot of people's minds. A few things to look at: their current market cap is 6.1 million. That's pretty low for, I mean, it's a crypto winter, so a lot of projects have gone to these lower market caps like this. Do notice that half of their tokens are now in supply, and I like that at least half of their tokens are now in the circulating supply and not out there to potentially get dumped on the market. Of course, realize that still half is in there that maybe the company itself gets some ecosystem tokens that could be sold and put into the market. So I would love to see that 90 or 95% were already in circulating supply and have the market cap be as low as this. But at least 50% of them are now in circulation and in that supply and can't then be dumped onto the market. So I think that's why we're starting to see a flattening of the bottom, because during this time, more of those tokens were coming into circulation, as well as we're in this crypto winter. So the price was coming down, 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 starting to see a flattening of this bottom. That doesn't mean it doesn't go sharply down a little bit more. It just means we're probably possibly near the bottom on this. Probably not at the bottom, but probably near it is my thought on it. Cool. Let's take a look at the next one. That would be Netvrk's token.
Yeah. So is just verify that this is the correct one. Yeah,
it seems to be up to date too.
Yep, it's good. Okay, great. So with this one, again, it's a pretty similar situation in as much as that we are looking at a downward trend. This is the main downward trend line. You see, look, one, and then it just touches it bang on. I mean, sometimes these trend lines just work so well, and sometimes they don't. I mean, and there are times when it breaks it, and then it's like, has it broken it? And I know that it's never clear cut with any single form of analysis. You've got to put all the pieces together. But what this tells me is, because it's respecting this line so well, that we need to break this line before I get bullish. The price action itself is still under pressure, and it's heading towards the lows from last year. So I'd expect some buying to come in around these levels, just because it's matching the prior lows, and there will be the temptation to buy it. Now, if it's a good technology, that would be the case. And I'm, obviously I don't know any of the fundamentals as to why I might buy here. So if I had some good reasons, I probably would be thinking, actually, this is a pretty good zone to buy. But from a technical point of view, which is the way I look at it, it has more work to do. There's no reversal pattern here as yet. and the trend has been pretty smooth to the downside. So I can't just suddenly say, yeah, this is bullish just because you know, I want it to go up. I have to see something concrete that's telling me some good buying is coming in and it's formed some form of base, and or it breaks this downward trend line. So for me, again, also given the macro situation, I would be more cautious and I'd say this is a wait for the moment.
Good points. So Paul, that is a wait. For me, it's a wait too. I want to see, I don't currently hold any of the token. I have in the past. I bought a bunch when it was dirt cheap and I sold it. Unfortunately for me, I sold a lot of it like at 20 cents and then $1. It went all the way to like 6.50. But I did buy a little bit in this slower, or this rounded part that was around June time period, and sold it just to diversify in something else when I think it was a little bit up. But I want to like this project long term. There's been a squabble between the co-founders, and somewhat of a serious squabble. And that's why we see that big drop off after it went up, and brought it way down from almost 60 cents down to 20 cents. And so Netvrk is doing its own metaverse, which will be supposedly a higher graphic quality than things out there like Decentraland. And they partnered with a bunch of NFT projects that have done well given the environment that we're in, like Angry Ape Army and Crypto Walkers and some other ones that are doing some very cool things. And so I would like to see this one and those projects all do very well together. Whether it makes it to there, in crypto, it's a risk. We're all investors. If you're buying in this stuff, this is all early round investing in risky assets and projects and companies that are at a risky stage that they haven't made it permanently yet. And if it goes well, then the price could do massively well. And if they do end up failing, well, then it could go to zero. So I still hold a whole bunch of land in their metaverse. I don't hold any of this token at this current price. I would be, for me, it's just a wait, only because I'd be hoping to get a little bit cheaper because, you know, I expect the news to be a little bit bearish and markets react bearish. And when I'm trying to pick up more of something, I like to buy as much as I can. And I'm concerned that we're not at the bottom of this price yet here, or near enough to the bottom that I would even make an additional nibble in it. Right. Cool. Let's take a look at Raini. This came as a suggestion from one of our viewers.
Yeah. So I've got this on CoinGecko because I couldn't find it. I couldn't find it here. So I'm just going to show you. I've got, so there's Raini US dollar, which I don't think it is.
Raincorn. Yeah, I think that's the one. We're looking for Raincorn.
Yeah, but that's not up to date. And okay. And then the other Raincorn, so this first one's from what I remember, definitely wasn't up to date. So look, we'll just go straight to the CoinGecko chart because that was definitely not right. And the other ones I looked at, I couldn't find either. So this is, let me just get this up here. Right. Why has it done that? There we go. So this looks to me, so apologies for this different type of chart, but we're getting this here because of the data. So this has been in a downward trend for a while, and we've got this downward trend here with this rebound. Now this rebound is interesting because it's either going to stop here, go into a reversal, and then we're going to get a very nice double bottom. So that being one base, that being the resistance, another low, and if it can go up, that will trigger a reversal of trend. But for the moment, if we look at the trend line, the trend takes us across here and it's still below that. So the default position here is to be cautious and to wait. So I think the downward trend is dominant. If we're still not below this low here that formed in June, you know, in a few weeks' time, once the interest rate rises and the dollar storm's been weathered, as it were, if we're still above that, then that would be a really good sign. But it is still turning down even in the short term. So I think, you know, all the sort of pointers say that we should wait for now. But I would like to return to this to see in a few weeks' time to see whether it's managed to hold its support and it can go back up again. Obviously, I don't know anything about the fundamentals as to what it does. But from what I can see, its positives are it's above this June low. So it's had a bounce and it's in a kind of relatively neutral position, but heading close to some really important support, which is why we've got to be careful. But, you know, longer term, this could be forming something very interesting that we'd have to react to if it broke this resistance. But for the moment, it's a nice pick. Thank you. But I think we're going to have to wait. Okay.
So, Paul, that is a wait. For me, let me share some things on it. So a couple of things I like about this. So its market cap is at 8 million. Look at this. The fully diluted market cap is also at 8 million. And that's because 100% of its supply is already in circulation. I do like that aspect of it. As far as charts, so that's on the logarithmic scale. We can see a little bit better on the non-log scale that it was almost 20 cents. Is currently down at 1.5 cents. So what that retraced is that 85%, 90%, somewhere around there, not quite 95% retracement from its highs. Okay, I like that aspect of it. So what does it do? Going to their website, it's like, welcome to the Rainiverse. The Rainiverse is an evolving ecosystem of key innovations, including an NFT farming platform with exciting DeFi features, play-to-earn gaming, and much, much more. So it looks like there's some games associated with it, the Lords of Light. They also have a launch pad for launching, it looks like NFT projects or tokens. They partner with some initial artists here that have some cool stuff. I mean, this art, crazy, whatever that thing is. Looks like some kind of flycatcher plant. Really looks pretty cool. That looks pretty amazing. That's interesting. So, is this a project that can do well? Yeah. I mean, charts look okay on it. Fundamentally, I don't know who the team is behind it. So that's a concern. I do like that all their tokens are in circulation. So there's not a bunch that can be dumped on me. Overall, I kind of like the charts. Let me look at the last 3 months. It is still hitting lower lows, so it might still be going lower, or maybe it's going to end up holding this resistance. I guess for me, I would need to know a little bit more about the team. Otherwise, I probably would be okay to take a nibble, but I don't know enough about the team here to know for sure that I understand where it could go from here. What I also like to understand when I'm buying is this something that potentially, if things go well according to their vision, that they can 100x or 200x from here. And I can't say I know enough about their vision and where they're trying to take it to understand that part of this equation. But great suggestion from one of our viewers. Chart looks better than some of the charts we've seen. And I do like that there's not more token supply that can be dumped on those, because they only launched, according to this, like a year and a half ago, and yet 100% of their tokens are in circulation. That's cool. All right, let's take a look at the next one, which would be Epik. EPIK.
Yeah, so this one is, I think you can guess pretty much what I'm going to say here. We're into a new low. I mean, it's the low on the chart. If I try and get, what I do is try and get more data just to see if there's any sort of long-term support approaching this area. But it seems like these are fresh lows, which unfortunately is a bit of a bad sign. So we had a potential base here. So I think it would have been fair enough to try and buy it on a breakout of this point. But then that got rejected very quickly. So the thing with technicals is it's probability. So you say, yeah, that's a buy, but then a few days later it can be an exit the position. What we're trying to do is minimize our losses and maximize profits. And the way to maximize it is to try and stay with a stable trend. So the downside seems to be very dominant here, as you can see. And so at the very least, I would need a break of a trend line to indicate that that is either coming to the end or it's showing that there's a bit of strength. And even a break of the trend line at this point might not be enough for me, because it feels like this is such a big downward trend. It needs a basing pattern to build on. I mean, I don't mind spinning the wheel sometimes and just having a nibble, as Jay was saying here, but it would definitely have to be on a break of this trend line. And at the moment, the probabilities are still favoring the downside. So this is one where it's between a wait and a sell, and probably more like a sell for the moment, given that it's much weaker than the rest of the market. And there are probably some challenges coming as well. So it seems to be leading the market on the way down, which is not a good sign.
Great. Great analysis, Paul. Thank you. Let me just share. So I was looking at the website itself here. Okay. So Zenoscope Grim Universe Collection by Samho. Have fun with the first time collaboration between Samho and Zenoscope's Grim Universe. Collect all 12 NFTs and complete your team. Okay. Artwork on that is so-so. The market cap is still fairly high given the savagery of the market that we're in. Surprising. Maybe there's something a little bit better about this project than can be seen just by going to their website, because I don't see anything special. And projects I know much better, their market caps are even lower than this. So maybe there's something I'm not aware of. That is really interesting, is breaking through to new lows here. And so I'm glad you charted out that trend line. It would be a little bit, I don't know that we get charting tools right here on CoinMarketCap. So it is bumping right up against that trend line and might break through it. Their market cap is all the way at 5 million, though we see that only 576 million out of their max supply of 2 billion are in circulation. So that's why we're seeing a big difference here between the market cap and the fully diluted market cap. Interesting. This would be an interesting one. I wish the user had told us more about what they like about it. It would help us. It does look like it's part of Animoca Brands portfolio, and so then that makes sense why their market cap is held strong at around the 5 million mark. One of the things a lot of investors do is they just lean on companies like Animoca Brands, that is a very successful venture capitalist investor, and they just follow their portfolio, because if Animoca Brands invest in this, there's probably something substantive to it. So for me, just if the chart looked a little bit better, possibly this would be a buy. It just looks like it's going to get cheaper. It's really interesting that it held this period pretty strongly and then bam, collapsed right through it. And so might be exploring further downside. And maybe some of that is some tokens are still vesting to pre-sale investors or ecosystem or marketing tokens that then got sold into the market, which is where it broke below this price and has continued downward. That is the risk when this market cap number is very different from this fully diluted market cap number. That still means that, what is it, 1.42 billion tokens are still out there, not in circulation yet, that will get sold at certain points into the market. So I'm not comfortable enough that I would buy this. In fact, if I had some, I might even sell a little bit of it or a lot of it, hoping to get some more later. I do follow some of the investments of Animoca Brands. I feel like they're very savvy, and they tend to do really well over time. Cool. Great suggestion by one of our viewers. Thank you for that one. Let's look at Axero.
Yeah, Axero. So I had a bit of difficulty finding this one. So So obviously the data on this. Oh,
Alpha
actually,
Zero.
yeah,
Yep.
Alpha Zero. Oh, actually, no, sorry.
Zero.
Yeah, I'll take that back. Actually, here it is. So I went to CoinGecko, but actually it's right here. So that's my mistake. So here it is. Now this is as you can see relatively balanced. We've had a double bottom formation form here, which is really good in terms of how it's played out. So we've got this lower line that comes across here as resistance. This is what I'm looking for. You know, when I'm talking about some of the double bottom patterns that haven't formed, this is what we want to see. It goes down, goes up, comes back down again, then breaks through the resistance. Now, you sometimes get a test of that breakout point, which is really good, where it just sits on it and gives you a secondary opportunity to buy. So this has worked technically really nicely. So point for that. But since then, the broader market hasn't really been in its favor, and it's just been treading water. So what do we do here? I think this is overall relatively neutral, but I would still like to see it try and have a go at the upside. So when things are looking better in the macro situation, I think this could be one of the first to move to the upside. We could still draw a trend line from the low, because this is a low point, and it would be fair enough to have this as a bullish trend. It's just that obviously the rate of that trend, so it started off like this, it's coming back as a correction, it's eased off a bit. The rate has decreased, but that's all right, because 45-degree angle for a trend line is actually one of the most sustainable. So for me, I think it's a wait here, but if it got any lower, I think I would have a little nibble at it, because it's looking at a better position than some of the other markets. Now, where I think I'd have to throw in the towel and say, okay, I've got it completely wrong, and I'd have to bail out, like the other chart again, as I was showing you, it would actually be through this support. So at 85 cents, or sorry, 83.5 cents was this really good breakout point. So if it managed to get to here, I would expect it to hold, because it's worked so nicely as resistance and support. But then if it breaks that, that's also an indication that the trend is failing, and I'd have to respect that. But it's a really good one, and if it wasn't for the broader sort of macro position, I'd be really tempted to buy. But as I say, this week I'm being uber cautious, so I'm going to say it's a wait, but I do like it.
Yeah, great suggestion by one of our viewers. That chart is very interesting compared to a lot of other things we looked at. Now, last July, the market was savaged and went down to some lows. What's interesting is still how high it is compared to last July, and that shows a lot of strength. So it pumped. So that's, I guess this is this recent July. My bad. This recent July that it bottomed, and then it's since come up. Now, looking at the website, or let me show you a few things on the fundamental side. So its market cap is 123 million. Now, this is a third generation blockchain, which has potentials for much higher market caps than sometimes other projects, at least at this point in the market. Now, the fully diluted market cap is almost 3x of that, which tells us a little more than a third of the tokens are currently in circulation. This is really sounds very interesting. I like everything it says in this part here. It says, meet Aleph Zero, privacy enhancing public blockchain with instant finality. Okay, instant finality? That a lot of the blockchains that are out there, the finality time between when the transaction is submitted, when it's finalized, is anything but instant. So instant finality sounds very attractive. Aleph Zero is built for enterprises, Web 3.0, and DeFi use cases. Aleph Zero is a proof of stake public blockchain. We combined an original ABFT, which is I'm forgetting Byzantine fault tolerance. I forget the A part of that. Consensus protocol with a customized substrate stack. Currently, we're working on enhancing the platform with a privacy framework based on zero-knowledge proofs. I do like privacy transactions and chains what attracts me about that is right now in real life, we have some privacy, right? When you spend things through your bank account, not everybody can get access to that. The government with a subpoena can get access to it, but other than that, it stays private. So there's a tiny bit of oversight where if criminal behavior is suspected and shown to a certain point, then the authorities can get a judge to sign off on it, and they can get that if needed. But other than that, it's private, meaning the whole world can't check out your transactions. One of the challenges with blockchain is public blockchain, in that everyone can see your transactions. Do you want somebody to know, say you have recently diagnosed with a small form of cancer? Do you want people to see that you're buying cancer meds? Sometimes you want to keep that kind of stuff private, or there might be other things that you're buying that, is just better kept in the private realm versus the public realm. In order for that to be possible, we need blockchains that have privacy. And so this one, we looked at this once before a while back based on some viewer suggestions. I'm not super familiar with, I don't know anything about the team and not super familiar with this project, but this is a good one to add to my radar because, and see where it goes. I mean, these kind of projects, if they get some steam and money comes back in the market, can go from a market cap of 123 million to in the billions or tens of billions of dollars. So cool. Great suggestion by one of our viewers. Let's take a look at the next one, which is Drife. And we've covered this a few different times. And I like this one. I like to follow it. I hold a lot of Drife myself.
Yeah. So, yeah, Drife is, unfortunately, again, it's still in this downward trend. So it's still a little bit unloved broadly. And the short-term price action is also not looking particularly supportive of a reversal quite yet. So we did see, if we just zoom in here, a very sharp downward move, which was then reversed quickly, which is okay. But we have to look at that in the context of the trend. And the question here is that enough to reverse the overall downward path of the market? And I would say if you take a step back at that, it doesn't look like it's done enough to reverse the trend as yet. So for the moment, despite the interesting element of the project and the good fundamentals, the market is still under, or this particular market is still under a bit of a cloud. And there's some really good projects out there that are in this position. It doesn't necessarily mean that the long term will be this way. It's just that the short term, it's failed to sort of spark enough interest. But that's because, very often you can have, like with value investing, as I was saying at the top of the show, it's often the people who are the visionaries that get in and have to sustain this sort of price action before everybody else sees it. So that's one of the curses of being good at seeing a good project. You have to kind of ride out the downside. But the technicals haven't turned around as yet for someone like me who doesn't know anything about the fundamentals and is just reliant on this price action for the trading signals. I would say that given this trend, I would require it to get back over this this level here, which is just below a cent. So I prefer it to be above that, because then it would be potentially forming a bigger reversal rather than just it breaking a downward trend line. So that's kind of my recovery point. You see how it reversed here, tried to go up, and that failed. At the very least, I'd like it to get back over this low, this resistance. So I think if it gets up there, it might try and test it as resistance. So a break through it would be a good sign for me. But for the moment, it's still looking like the trend is downward. So this could get cheaper. But if it gets, it might get to the point where I'll have a nibble just because it will almost be like, so inverted commas cheap, that if the fundamentals are good, it might be worth having a go. But I'd be breaking the rules of technical analysis, but don't tell anybody.
I know, right? I hope this one gets even cheaper, even though I have a large position in this. That chart looks like it is strongly suggested it'll get at least a little bit cheaper, if not a lot cheaper. So part of me is tempted to rate this as a sell just because the chart looks somewhat bearish and that prices are going to go down some more. Here's a little bit different look at it. So the current market cap is only $452,000. Now, if all their tokens were in circulation, it would be $1.8 million, which is still a really, really low market cap. Now, this is a decentralized comparator to Uber. I've covered it a number of times because I like it. That doesn't mean it can't fail. It has every risk of failing, right? If they run out of money that they raised like a year and a half ago, I think they raised in tens of millions of dollars total, and they probably have sold off some of their ecosystem tokens and had more. And whether that will be enough to sustain them through this crypto winter, I don't know. I have heard that they were seeking additional investment round for selling equity to some private venture capitalist investors, and hopefully that goes successful. If so, that will give them even more capital to work through. They found a way to bring rides cheaper. So think about Uber. What if the drivers got paid more and yet the riders paid less because they were able to lower overhead? That's great. I like that narrative, but just because they have a great narrative, they have a great idea, it doesn't mean they succeed. Some of my investments I made that I ended up making really good money on, I was completely aware and awake to the fact that they could fail at any time. And there's some that I have bought that have absolutely failed. And so they're at a hard point that they could fail from here. What I like is if they succeed, their potential upside would be gigantic. If they fail, well, then because I don't trade on leverage, then just my investment in them could fail. And the risk to return is getting good. Me personally, I have a little bit of capital on this side. I'm tempted to buy just a little bit more at this price because, in my opinion, it's so dirt cheap. I like the risk to reward, even though the chart is saying to me, like, literally sell, because I think it's going to get a little bit cheaper. And for me, selling, it would be selling just to buy back more. This is one of the ones I want to hold in case they do succeed. I like the CEO. She's been on our channel twice. I think she's a very capable individual. Her vision is she's been a business owner for a long time. She's taken a lot of rides with Uber and Lyft and many other companies, and she understands the problems with them very well and trying to bring a better solution so that drivers make more money while delivering a cheaper ride. So I want that business model to succeed, knowing full well it might not. And so for me, the amount of money I have in this is under 1%. But I'm looking to add more as it gets cheaper. The only reason I would add more at this point is because I keep my eyes on so many things. Sometimes I forget to check the charts when I see it does bottom, and I forget to buy it. And then I'm only hearing about it because all of a sudden it's going up. And I check the charts and I'm like, crap, I missed the bottom. And now it's 3 or 5 or 10x from that bottom price. And so that's the only reason why I might personally buy a little bit more. The chart is not screaming at me buy right now at all. It's just that I have such ADHD and there's so many coins that I am watching that I'll just miss. If I were holding just 4 or 5 positions that I was watching closely, I wouldn't be buying right now. I would be waiting a little bit more. And that's why I rate this as a sell, even though I might buy a little bit. It's just because it'll probably get cheaper and I'll probably forget to recheck it and miss that entry point.
I know exactly what you mean.
Right. And so it's weird. It's like I recommend it as a sell, but then I might buy some more at this price, which then, if everybody's selling, it'll drop on me and I don't care. Like by all means, dump your tokens into, on my head and then buy it back cheaper. That's great. I won't likely be the one selling it to you at the cheaper prices. That'll be somebody else with weak hands. Because for this one, I'm ready to just hold my position till it dies or till it does significantly better, at which point I start taking some profits. Let's take a look at Shopx. Now, this one, frustrating part of my portfolio because I've dollar cost average on this one on the way down, and it's gone down.
Yeah,
and
so this is the it's split, isn't it? Yeah, yeah. I think this one is not updated on here, so I'm going to get it on CoinGecko, I think. So let's get this here. So yeah, I'll just make the chart a bit bigger and make it logarithmic. There we go. So yeah, unfortunately, this is still in a downward trend for the moment. It's not showing many signs of easing. So if we look at the rate of decline, it's fairly consistent. We had this pausing period in this middle period here. So between sort of July 21 and May 22, it was in a range which it could have built on, but unfortunately, I think the rest of the market was bearish and it's just pushed it down. The fact that actually it didn't rally much when the rest of the market was going up may have been a bit of an indication that this could have sort of extended lower. Now, with the broader picture looking a bit more bearish than it has done, again, I think we've got to be careful of the ones that have been leading the way down. But it could be that a crypto asset like this will be one of the first to indicate when the trend is changing. So I'd be interested in this as a marker for risk to come back into the market. So if this, for whatever reason, would break this resistance point here, so you see these, we've got one to actually, let's get a shorter term chart and I can show you a bit better. Let's try 90 days. So this resistance here, these points 1, 2, 3, 4, if we can get over that high, which is around 3 cents, or just 0.029, so nearly 3 cents. If we can break through that, I think it'd be quite interesting. But for the moment, as you can see, the chart is still to the downside. It's fairly consistent in its downward trend. So I'm going to have to say it's definitely a wait. Whether it's a sell or not remains to be seen. It probably, I'd say maybe it edges it as a sell. But if the fundamentals are good, then we should see some interest coming in, excuse me, very soon.
Yeah, I would like to see more from the team on this. So let me share a few things I'm looking at. Number one, their market cap is all the way down to 688,000. Some concerns, their fully diluted market cap is 12 million, which means in circulation only 28 million of their 500 million tokens, which means a little more than 5% is out there in circulation. Yeah, so I've dollar cost averaged into more and more of this. Here's something I like about it. They're pretty active on Twitter, giving us some updates. So if you follow their Twitter, great. They've been around for over a year and only have 30,000 followers. Now, this can swing. If their price starts doing well, it can swing. So I can't say I'm happy about my investment in this. I wish I had waited to dollar cost average in a lot cheaper, but oh well, that's part of investing. Now, there's been points on other things I bought that I'm in this similar uncomfortable position, that my positions are way down, and I'm concerned. I'm like, I hope the team makes it. And some of those actually turned around, did exceptionally well from that point, and some did go to zero. Some bullish things about it is that they're pretty active on Twitter. Here we got a picture of their team just from September 12th. Okay, together, looks like a good group, and they're engaged, and their Twitter is really good. Here's a concern I have, though, going to Shopx on Coin market cap, and then I go to community, I go to their Medium, and that Medium link is not working. Not able to pull up their Medium. Let's check for a save version and see, did they just stop? Yeah, so using the Wayback Machine, we find some stuff. Now, they did change from split to just calling it straight Shopx, so there wasn't a confusion there, but why are the two not connecting right? And so we see a lot of articles from like December 7th, which is last year, and not some updates there. So that's a little bit of concern. I would be more concerned if I didn't see them so active on Twitter. But just some concerns there. I do look for signs of life, and there's some signs of life. Am I going to add to my position this? No. Am I going to sell my position? That chart suggests it's going to get cheaper. The reason I'm not going to sell my position is because I wouldn't watch it closely enough, and I would forget to re-enter. So to me, it looks like it's going to get cheaper. And for those that, like, if I were in a situation, this was my first cycle and I only had 5 or 7 positions, I would totally be selling this, and then I would be buying some if it hit cheaper numbers, and taking that risk. As it is, there's too much that I'm in that I just hardly ever do that anymore. I just have my positions usually and then ride it out, because a couple times I've forgotten to buy back in, and then I kick myself because then it's pumped it up a whole bunch and I just refuse to buy in, or I'm buying back in for a lot more than I sold, just as my portfolio has grown and my diversification has grown. So at this, if I just had 5 or 7 positions, I would be selling this one personally, and then I would be looking to re-enter that position, maybe even buy the same amount as I had before. It would leave some money left over that I would then put into something else that's showing even stronger signs of life. Now, from this market cap, what's cool is if it does go strong, I mean, there's huge potential upside here. Even if more of their tokens come into circulation, that market cap is so low that if it went to $100 million market cap, even if some more tokens came into circulation, that could still mean the tokens could 100x from here. And that's just $100 million market cap. When money comes in, some of these projects go to billions of dollars in market cap. All right, my thoughts, great suggestion by one of our viewers. The next one is Fetch AI.
Yeah. So I think Fetch, again, I don't think it's updating. Fetch AI, first one we pick here, it's not up to date. So I think we may have to go to CoinGecko. So just double check. So we've got Fetch AI and there's Fetch, which I'm assuming is, that's definitely something different.
FET would be its ticker symbol. FET USD. That might be it there. And that's
FET. Oh, that one. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's not up to date either. So we will go over to CoinGecko, which is what I prepared. So I try to, as you know, I prefer the other chart the way it looks. So I'd like to be at least to be able to turn off this indicator that keeps jumping in the way of the chart. But with Fetch, this is a downward trend that is consolidating. So rather than it actually being in just a broad downward trend, it is actually going sideways here, which is one positive for it. If we take the maximum, we can see it has been in quite an aggressive downward trend for a while. This is a big head and shoulders reversal. But there are some signs that we could be coming closer to the end of the trend, but we would need to break this resistance high at just over 1 cent. Sorry, just over 10 cents, I should say. So just over 10 cents would form a double bottom. At the moment, it's had a go at that and it's come off again. So it's still within this range that it's been playing in. So from the low that we've seen in June to the high point from the 11th of August, it's still in that range bound price action. Now, given the overall broad downwards trend, I wouldn't be confident that this will hold its low. I've got a feeling it's going to try and take out this low and become a bit cheaper before it then recovers. So I'm braced for a break of this low. Now, I hope I'm wrong. If we haven't broken this low in a couple of weeks, then the risk will start to shift to the upside, because the question would be, with everything looking bearish broadly in the macro position and it close to the low, then how come the market hasn't managed to take out its previous key low? So if the bears haven't got control of it, then it shifts over to the bulls. But in between, we're still in a relatively kind of neutral position. And as I said at the top of the show, I've got to have a bias, given the broader macro position, to be a bit more cautious. So that's why I'm going to say it's a wait here. But I would definitely be interested in it if it broke through 10 cents. I think that that'd be a really nice little technical pattern, and I hope it could build on that.
Great analysis. So what would you say on this? So wait.
Yeah, so it's a wait. I mean, it's sort of borders on a sell, but I think it's fair enough for it to be a wait.
Let's check out what coin we can learn from Coin Market Cap. So its current market cap is 61 million. Fully diluted market cap is about 50% higher at 94 million, which means 2/3 of the tokens are in supply, 65% anyway in supply. I like that part of it. Here's a look at their price overall. So they went really, really cheap March 2020 and then have steadily climbed since then up until the end of year last year, and they've been declining since then. Interesting. Looking at their stuff, like their website tells us a little bit. Blockchain for builders, a blockchain network that offers easy-to-use tooling for developing your decentralized apps with token and liquidity management, free framework so you can focus on building and monetizing your dApps. So really this comes down to how good is their system for building dApps and how many people start using it. Now you see these things, Binance, Gemini, Indicoin. A lot of times that just tells us what markets they're trading on. Sure enough, Gemini, Kucoin, Coinbase, Binance, they're all trading on. So they are already on Coinbase, so that's a big deal. So how good are their tools? That I don't know. Just don't know. So that market cap is a decently low market cap for something that is trading on Coinbase. So I don't know. For me, this is just a wait. I'm having a hard time assessing its potential upside without knowing the project really in depth. What helps with this is when you make your suggestions, a lot of times the people making the suggestions do know the in-depth analysis, and then they're just sharing with us the ticker symbol, hoping that I'll know exactly what's going on with it. But there's 18,000 or more altcoins out there. I don't know every one of them, not even every great one out there. So share with us what you like about things. That gives us some insights that we wouldn't otherwise know, because in your mind, you might have a whole bunch of things you already know about this. And you're like, but Rain, what about this and this? I can't know everything, and I don't try to know everything. So tell us what you like about Fetch.ai. I know we covered this in the past. It's been a while. So yeah, for me, it would just be a wait simply because I don't know about their potential upside from here. The chart doesn't look terrible to me, but yeah, it's down from its highs, but it's not even all that down from its highs. I like to see a bigger fall. So high at 95 cents. It's currently down 90%. There's a lot of altcoins that are down like 99.9%. So this is only 90% down, and maybe there's a good reason it's only 90% down, because it has a really strong future. I just don't know that side of it. All right, let's move on to the next one. So for me, it's just a wait. Let's move on to Singularity NET. I do know something about Singularity NET.
Yeah, so Singularity NET, interesting name. So I'd like to hear a bit more about what they do. So we have had a downward trend, and that was reversed out here with the first phase of what I'd expect to see in a major reversal. And it touched, again, it's this point about some charts trade really nicely from a technical point of view. It hit this resistance where it touched it and came off. So it's confirmed now. We know that this 7 to 8 cents level, or this 8 cents level, is really, really key. Now, where it is now is in a relatively neutral position, but it's in a neutral position where this could all be forming a larger base. So it's off its lows as well. So it's forming a fairly solid base here. So I'd like to see it breaking through this 8 cents level as a very strong buy signal. And I would understand a nibble at these levels because it's in a potential base, but it's not quite enough as yet to say it's a strong buy. So for me, it's a wait. but it's consolidating in a very interesting way. Now, where things start to get a bit of a concern is if it was to break lower and take out this sort of hello, I'll just do that again. If it's to take out this fledgling trend line, and I wouldn't want it to do that. I don't mind it trading back into the range a little bit, because of course the market has to do that when it's building a base. But if it takes this support out, for me, that's a sort of warning sign that it could be heading to lows. On a relative basis, again, it's doing pretty well. So I like it compared to some of the other markets. It's still having to reverse this major trend, though, this major downward trend here. But it's doing it in a way that if it can get through this 8 level, it would have formed a fairly large double bottom formation, which is a really good sign. And as I say, it's increased in power because of that rebound here. It's made this 8 cents level very, very significant. So it's an interesting one. I'll be interested to hear what they do. So for me, it's a wait. Thank you for suggesting it.
Yeah, some great suggestions this week by our viewers. For me, it's going to be a wait too, and I'll share with you why. I'd like to buy along that lower trend line. As far as what it is, so back in 2017, 2018, many of you were not around back then in crypto or looking at crypto. Some big buzzwords that people were always saying, oh, our project is going to use AI to change the world, right? So they'd be like, AI and blockchain, that's the future. Okay, so it's not that they're necessarily wrong on it, but they didn't necessarily have the AI team behind to make it work, right? So they would just throw those out. Those were buzzwords, and they'd raise a bunch of funds, and then the project would fail. Okay, so enter Singularity NET. So here's their website, but very importantly, what do I say? Look at the team. So the founding team, Dr. Ben Gortzel, he is one of the premier people in AI research in the world. So this is kind of like the Einstein of AI research. So when we say they have the right team, yes, they have the right team. So if anyone's going to produce great AI and research generated by that AI, great alpha related to that AI, probably he's one of those people. So that's what makes me like their team behind it, right? So the team makes sense for what they're trying to accomplish. What are they trying to accomplish? Well, a decentralized AI for the emerging global brain. The combination of AI with blockchain shifts innovation from traditional silos of power to an exponentially more powerful system of distributed creativity and governance. Singularity NET is creating the framework and the technologies for this shift. Okay, I like that. Their current market cap is just at 56 million. Over half their supply is in circulation, so 1.1 billion. And their total max supply is 2 billion. So, yeah, what, 55% is in circulation. They're currently on this pullback. You showed a better chart where there's this trend. Now, it looks like maybe the trend's reversed. I would prefer to buy on that lower trend line. Even if it then breaks through it, that's okay. I just like to I don't have to buy the exact bottom. I like buying things at a pretty good price. And it's getting there. Like it's going back to that. It is tradable on Binance, it's tradable on Kucoin, it's even tradable on Uniswap. So it's buying, it's even tradable on Cardano, on Sunday Swap and MinSwap. So cool. They are strongly associated with the Cardano team as well. I like that aspect too. So I'm very bullish on the team behind Singularity. Right. Thank you to the viewer who suggested that. So for me, it would just be a wait, but even tempted to, buy a bit just because, but I do think it'll hit that trend line again. And that trend line is going to be a cheaper place. If it touches it, be a cheaper place than it is now. Great. Let's see. We might have one more. IXS.
Yeah, so I couldn't find this one on the normal chart, so I just want to check which one it would be. So IX swap, I assume, right, unless it's this IXS US dollar. So IX swap was oh, hang on, something strange happened when I was looking at it earlier and it wasn't updating, but it is now, which is great because I had it queued up on CoinGecko. So this is a this is an interesting one as well, that in a similar position, it's potentially trying to form a base. So we've seen a downward trend. Like, there's not a huge amount of data to go on here, but it's formed a double bottom, which is key, and it's had to run from that double bottom. Now, the size of the bottom or the base indicates how far the trend would go. Now, a minimum target is the height of the pattern. So that's why I say if it's a bigger pattern, you've got a bigger base, it's got more upside potential. And it actually achieved that on this breakout, but it's come back below the very important baseline trigger, or the trigger point for that base. So the question is, it's kind of neutral because it was bullish, but now it's come back into this neutral area because it's taken out this 6 cents point. So that 6 cents area was the buy point, but it's come below it. Now, I still like this because I think it's still forming, or within, I mean, it may have just eased below it, but it's close enough for it to be within this upward trend. I wouldn't want to see it going too much lower than this. And actually, you know, it may well do, but I can see that this is trying to develop a reversal. So it's going to be a wait for now, but if it can trade back over the 6 cents point, then for me, that's kind of like a kind of watershed line for it. Above it, I'm going to be bullish. And the more it gets towards this key resistance at 10 cents, or just over 10, nearly 11 cents, where it failed last time, the more excited I'll get about it, because that is the real barrier for it. If it's going to be a long-term buy, it's got to get through here. Now, the question is, do you try and pick it up on a retracement, hoping that it will eventually come round and start to break that level? I would say you've got to be very cautious about doing that. You could take maybe a small position here, but nothing significant. And if it starts to break any of these support levels around 3.5 cents, then it's probably time to bail. But this is, again, one of those ones where we should come back to it in a couple of weeks, maybe a month, to see how it's traded. Has it managed to turn around, and will it be on this path of breaking through 11? From a technical point of view, it's undecided here. That's why I'm having to explain all the levels and where we would have to get interested in it. But it's had a good run. It's had a sharp run to the upside. So it looks like if everything else is going to turn up, it's going to turn up with it. So it's one that the market is very much interested in. It's just that it's correcting with everything else. So it could get pulled down with the broader market. But I like the way it trades technically. I like things that respect support and resistance, and also the way it created and traded through this double bottom pattern. That's really nice. So if this does end up being a bigger reversal pattern, then that's even more interesting from a long-term perspective. But for the moment, I'm going to have to say that it's a wait, but a great one to mention. So thanks for bringing it to our attention.
Yeah, our viewer that suggested this was a great suggestion. Current market cap is 4.1 million. Fully diluted market cap is just over double that. And so here's the self-reported circulating supply. It says 82 million is currently in circulation, whereas the max supply is 180 million. So a few things. Number one, I hold a lot of this. On your chart, you can see a little bit better. I don't know that it's going to hold this support line. Obviously, because I hold a lot of it, part of me says, yes, please hold it. I just don't know that it will. And so, now I wouldn't be disappointed if this got a whole lot cheaper, because I'd like to buy more of this. So let me explain what I like about it. Going to CoinGecko or CoinMarketCap, one of the ways I like to research is I like to click on the website right from these. So I know I'm not getting some fake site that's trying to get me to connect my stuff to them. So this is the actual site for them. TradeFi and DeFi platform for security tokens and fractionalized NFTs. Now, the SEC has said fractionalized NFTs are likely to be deemed a security token. So there's still some regularity uncertainty. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission seems to be taking the view that almost all altcoins are securities and wants to regulate them as such. If that happens, then we might see some problems with existing exchanges out there, and something that's treating everything as securities and fractionalized NFTs and getting full KYC on their people that are using it and making sure the compliance is already there. Those types of services will do exceptionally well, and IX Swap has positioned themselves for that. Now, even if it ends up being that the SEC gets a lot less power than they want, and say Congress comes in and passes some regulation that makes sense, that doesn't mean IX Swap can't still do well, because certain things will probably be deemed securities anyway. And so that their whole goal is to make those tradable in a way that would be regulatory compliant. So I feel like they're owning this small niche pretty well for where they're going. And I like that. They're a leader in this niche, even though their project is relatively new. I think I first did an interview with them right close to when their project launched, so we can get an idea of that date. Yeah, they launched late last year, so about a year ago. And then their token shot up, as often happens, and it's corrected downwards. They did have this really bullish move here. So my only concern is that they break through the chart you had up, that they break through that trend line and come down further, and maybe it still creates a double bottom, but a higher bottom than this. So right now it's trading at close to just under 5 cents, and it could go right close to this previous bottom, even if it was forming a double bottom, and I would want to buy some more cheaper. So I'm happy with the position I already have. As far as would I add to it? Yes, if it got a lot cheaper close to this other line. Yeah. So for me, it would be a wait. And that's the reasoning behind it, though I like this project and I like the team behind it. Cool. I think that's everything. Thank you, Paul, for joining us, and we appreciate your insights. And it is great that a lot of times you don't know the fundamentals, so that you just give us a refreshing look at just what you're seeing in the charts, not clouded by some of the stuff we see day to day, because sometimes that does cloud our vision.
It's always a pleasure. I'm learning just as much from you. So, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And, thanks for all your suggestions.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely to the viewers. Thank you for the ones you suggested. And if you want to suggest some ones, and we do really appreciate if you write up what you like about it, though you don't have to. It does help us give better analysis if you do. So thank you, everyone. Thanks, Paul.
My pleasure.
Remember, the crypto market is slow right now. Just know that good decisions made during these pullbacks lead to life-changing ones when the market turns around. And I know some people want those life-changing ones when the market turns around. Look, I've been through bear markets before, and this is exactly what they feel like. And it doesn't stay like this forever. At some point, money does come back in the market, and you see some massive gains. And that's a really exciting time. The ones who do really well when the money does come into the market are the ones that have taken these positions when the market was way down, and they didn't go away. They stuck around analyzing for good, cheap positions to take, and then they hold those positions till all this money comes into the market. This wrap is for all of you to reinforce the principles that I shared that make all the difference towards higher returns.
To the space, chasing all of the gains, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, you're bad before you're good. Was taught to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. I buy when it's down, don't chase the boats that I miss. Cause I always make the time in mind. I take the one out cause I'm patient like that. And I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't leave with my heart. The principles are simple, they're leaving a mark. Buy when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling, go parabolic and dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. The time is never better, the time like the present. The next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, studying to know that nothing comes easy, but with knowledge the game show. Sticking out this road, cause soon will come a bear market. Learning and growing, and when it's slow will be the target. They say it's come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. I'm strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time, the ball will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort, cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. Let go of the hate, let the haters be crapping. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time to be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. This game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, the time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough, and that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.